Hey loves, welcome back to my channel. Today guys, I'll be checking out this interesting video and it's titled Your Story Contradicts Itself. Per Davis clash over pointless International Women's Day. You guys, I'm super excited as always. If you're yet to subscribe to this channel, please consider subscribing. Give this video a massive thumbs up, comment, share and all that good stuff. And without much ado, let's see what this video is all about.
Today, Friday the 8th of March, marks, as I'm sure you know, International Women's Day. For over a decade, women and girls use this day to simply celebrate their gender. But not all women think it's a great idea. Joining me now is YouTuber and anti-feminist influencer, Pearl Davis. Thanks very much for being with us, Pearl. I obviously don't have a right to talk about this subject at all, but
Why
you
not?
do. Well, men aren't allowed to talk about women. We all know that.
Why?
As we can establish what
Famous
It's
rule.
a safe space here.
Famous rule in the modern era. Yeah. Anyhow, what do you make of all this? Are you celebrating International Women's Day in a big way?
I think that we should focus on accomplishment rather than just being a woman. I don't see the need to have an International Women's Day by virtue of just being a woman. Why don't we focus on something that we have accomplished? You know, 50% of the population is born a woman. You didn't do anything to become competent at something or become great at something. It's just, celebrating being a woman for being a woman. And what have we really accomplished? We don't do the majority of hard jobs in society. 1 out of 3 of us has had an abortion. 1 out of 4 of us has an STD. 90% of us have been on birth control. The birth rate is falling because of women's choices. At the end of the day, why don't we talk about accomplishment rather than just focus on being a woman for being a woman? It's the same thing as a participation trophy.
Okay, but
I just don't see the point.
I follow you on part of that, but what's abortions and STDs got to do with it?
Oh, women's poor choices. I mean, honestly, we've had more choice in the last 100 years than ever, and we just choose poorly. For example, abortion, that's one example. STDs is another example. The birth rate is falling. We own 80% of the world's debt.
80%.
We're a net tax loss. We're the majority on benefits. So, and the point of that is that, by giving us participation trophies and saying that we've accomplished something that we haven't, in my opinion, all it does is enable us to make poor choices with no repercussions.
Well, some people say that, and again, I can't possibly give my own opinion on this, but some people say...
You can. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm teasing you. Some people say that what this day does bring is an opportunity to pay attention and celebrate, as you say, 50% of the population who have historically not had access to some of the same opportunities that men haven't had.
What opportunities?
The educational opportunities. I'm thinking of things like university. Many universities didn't admit women until the last
women have
30
been
or 40
faring better
years.
than men in school for quite some time. The first female property owner was in the 1600s. A lot of times what feminists do is they rewrite history and make it seem like we were much more oppressed than we were.
Yeah.
Women have historically been a protected class and have had more...
You guys, I totally agree with what Pearl Davis is saying in this video, because if half of the world population is made up of women and the other half is made up of men, so what has women done to be celebrated every single year? Meanwhile, men are being kicked to the curb. Let me know what you guys think about this. I totally understand where she is coming from, because the way this Women's Day celebration is going to still boil down to feminism. And leave your thoughts in the comment section down below, and let's continue watching, you guys.
more rights than the average man. For example, women were never required to go to war. That was something that men were required to do. Oftentimes, women were actually a protected class. And the only reason I'm cutting you off is because, the more we repeat this stuff, the more we think it's true. It's just not true. The first female millionaire, 1800s, women, even in ancient Egypt, there were examples of female pharaohs.
Esther, I see you nodding furiously
of course,
as
I agree
Pearl
with
is
everything.
speaking.
Yes. I am curious, though, where your stats on the STDs and abortions are coming from. I'm assuming it's the US.
CDC. Yeah, CDC.
Okay. Oh, okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Look, my issue with International Women's Day is that it's been hijacked by. I initially said Western feminists, but I'm now going to broaden that and say just Western women in general, because they usually address issues that are clearly almost unique to Western women and their experiences. So, for instance, you have Western feminists that are more concerned with freeing the nipple, or whinging that a man is opening the door for them, or talking about the gender pay gap, as if having a child and having a family is not a blessing that you should. I
have a policy. I try to get around that one of the misogyny of opening a door for a woman.
Well,
if I see a woman trying to open a door, I push it from the other side, just so I can show that we're equal.
Show that you're in power. But then you have the other end, and the extreme end, which I suspect Pearl occupies, which is, women have had it so good and all of that, and effectively ignoring clear systemic injustices that women have had to face. I mean, I'm someone.
Okay,
I grew up. Well, I'll give you an example. I grew up in Ghana, in West Africa, and I was fortunate enough to have grown up in an educated family that saw the value of educating me and my brother equally. But I also had a classmate that was married off at 18 and had 4 kids by 24, and had basically no say in it. And this is in a modern country, in a modern world.
It sounds like you guys had choice, because you chose one thing and she chose another.
Someone of my same socioeconomic standing didn't have that choice. And I think you're talking about it as if that the problem doesn't exist.
Why didn't she have the choice if you had the choice?
How did she have the choice? Were you paying her school fees? Were you going to offer?
Well, why should you be entitled to free things? That's just
what do you mean be entitled to free things? Why shouldn't you have the choice of who you marry, or if you want to marry? Isn't that
you had the choice, but you guys are from the same country. You had the choice. I'm saying you just gave an example of you having a choice.
I can tell you this: if you grew up in northern Nigeria, you might very well be circumcised.
Your story contradicts itself. That's my point.
It doesn't contradict itself.
Because you claimed that there was no choice and you had a choice.
Claire,
she didn't have a choice. Did you hear what I said? The girl didn't have a choice because she was just a girl.
Why?
By virtue of being a girl.
She was 18. She was 18, was she not?
Okay, I want to bring in Claire. Claire, do you agree with Pearl?
No, I'm afraid not. And, as we've seen on International Women's Day, I have had a message on social media that says that I'm only spouting what my husband has allowed me to spout. And here we are in 2024. So, no, we need to fight for the rights of women. And I think it makes it even more impressive on International Women's Day that the misogyny is still alive and kicking. Women didn't have the vote in the United Kingdom until 100 or so years ago.
Why?
Why? Because they were not considered to be clever enough. They were not considered to be
that's not why.
It absolutely is right. Please don't tell me that.
Have you read the writings? Have you read the writings of the early suffragists from the 1920s?
Is that
right?
No.
Hang on, one at a time. Hang on.
You haven't.
You guys, like Esther said, feminism has hijacked International Women's Day, and if the reason for the celebration is genuine and legit, if the celebration was for a genuine cause, then I'll say it can continue. But the fact that it is gradually being twisted by feminists, we don't know what International Women's Day will be in the next 10 years. And let me know what you guys think about this. Why are men not celebrated? Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below, and let's wrap this video up, you guys.
You have it. That's the funny thing. And it's because, again, freedom came with responsibility. Freedom came with the responsibility where you had to be enlisted in the draft. That is why women did not get the vote. Most people in history did not get to vote. This was not simply a man or a woman thing. It was we do not get the freedom without the responsibility that comes with it.
And here in the United Kingdom, it was to do with owning property. It was women were not considered to be relevant on their own. They had to take their husband's status, and they weren't allowed into the House of Commons for some considerable period of time. And if you're 50% of the population, why should you not represent them? So no, I think we need to keep on fighting the fight for women on International Women's Day. I don't like the marketing aspects of it.
Property ownership came with the responsibility of owning property. And that's the thing. Freedom always came with responsibility. And we go on these shows and we spout out stuff like, you guys clearly haven't read this stuff.
Well, it's so obvious. The little writings of the Magna Carta,
the writings of the suffragettes and the anti-suffragettes at the time, because you really don't understand what went on at the time until you've actually read from the people at the time.
Let me just quickly, before I let you go, Pearl. I mean, I hear the criticisms of International Women's Day and things, but if I can actually, as they say, speaking as a man. If I can say, the thing that I do think is a criticism of this is that we do tend to, and it goes slightly to what Esther said, is that there's a lot of focus on high-end professions and like membership of boards, for instance. There's a stat I have here that was being given out by the WEF that women only make up 37.8% of boards. Isn't there a risk, though, with all this, that actually what something like International Women's Day does is it focuses on like high-status professions and it ignores the kinds of young women and girls that Esther referred to. What I mean is ordinary people. And that there's this focus on the strangest, highest end professions and just an ignoring of some real needs of some real people.
Sorry, what's the question?
Do you agree that that International Women's Day ends up focusing on, arguably, these high-end problems instead of some of the actual problems that do exist for some girls around the world, particularly in the developing world?
Yeah, and you know, I'm speaking from the West because I'm in the West. I can't really speak to countries that I'm not from, right, or I don't live in. But yeah, I mean, in all honesty, what % of people are going to be the board of anything? What % of people are going to be CEOs? It just doesn't speak to the average existence of a man and a woman in this country. And the truth of the matter is women do not do the hardest jobs in society. You know, I can quote A World Without Men by Aaron Clarey. They have an actuary verify these statistics. Women do not do the hard jobs in society. Men do the majority of infrastructure jobs.
Well, that's certainly true. Pearl, thank you very much for being with us.
Wow, you guys, that was such an interesting one. And who do you agree with on this debate? Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye, guys.